a distance between art and people, and art educators feel that especially, to the point where many art educators don't have trouble with their own self-worth, lowest on the totem pole in the schools, and it's a difficult position. One of the problems with art that I've seen, and I was an art educator, I taught public school for 10 years, was that we had difficulty conveying what art was all about. Our communication was visual. The rest of the world was verbal. And we got farther and farther away and less able to communicate what it was that art was all about. And that's why got interested in shamanism. And because the shamans were interested in that world too. But they had 20,000 years of experience to communicate it and use it to help people. And I think we can look at shamanism today and the kinds of things the shamans were doing to help us again. And I think hand in hand with art, the world can change. And I'm using the techniques of shamanism and the offshoots of visualization to do that. And it seems to be very effective because those techniques connect very quickly with those parts of our brain and everyone's brain that controls the visual, the intuitive, the holistic, the non-rational, the non-linear. People don't realize that. They don't look at their dreams. But how artistic are your dreams? Everyone's an artist in their dreams. These techniques make that available in a waking state. And so they're very powerful. And I want to show you how powerful they are and how available they are to everyone. What I'd like you to do is just close your eyes. Relax, try to get your body comfortable, just sort of let it shake out a little bit. And take a couple of deep breaths. Really, really deep breaths. In and out. In and out. And I want you to feel the warmth that's in this room just entering up, as if a warm bath, warm water is entering your body from your feet and moving slowly up your legs, relaxing and soothing, moving further up your legs, relaxing each muscle, moving up into your belly area, going around all your organs, relaxing and soothing them, filling your chest cavity, relaxing and soothing, slowly moving out your arms to the tips of your fingers, then back up to your shoulders, around your neck, the back of your neck, soothing those tense muscles in the back of your neck, up the back of your head, over the top of your skull, just soothing then entering and soothing your brain and slowly massaging the back of your eyes. Now, with the next breath, as you exhale, see yourself just rising up, rising with that breath, rising right up through this building. Just imagine your body just rising right straight up. And it can just pass through the ceiling, right up through into the clouds, up through the atmosphere. And then you start to travel around the earth. You can see the land and the water pass beneath you. And you now start to descend back to the earth, lighting down in a place you've never been before, with trees and shrubs, bushes. And you realize you're barefoot. And as you walk, you feel the moist earth on the bottom of your feet and the grasses brushing against your legs. You hear birds chirping. And you smell the richness of this moist place. And you follow a path, pushing the bushes aside, moving onward, hearing the wind rustle through the trees. And eventually you come to a hill. It starts out as a gentle hill, and you start walking up it. And eventually the grass disappears on the hill, and it becomes stone. And you start clambering around the stones, pulling your way up this hill that's getting steeper and drier. And the rocks get smaller as you climb, and they're loose, and they come out from under your toes, and you pull your way up. You come close to the top, and you don't slip and fall, and you pull some more, and you finally get to the top. And you anticipate what's on the other side of this little hill, and you pull yourself over. And there you see something you've never seen before. A new world is on the other side of that hill. You pull yourself over and run down into that world. And you start exploring that world. Explore that world for a few minutes, and I'll come back to you. Now I know this is a short time to explore a whole world, a new world. But I hope you've got a taste of that world, and now let it burn into your mind's eye for a moment so that you can take it back with you. And you look off in the distance, and you realize that your journey has taken you very close to home, to here. And with your next breath, you float back up into the sky and gently travel back to this building and settle down through the roof. back into your body in this chair. And with your next breath, as you take in that breath, you re-inhabit that body in this chair. And take another breath, and slowly, as you come back to consciousness, as you come back to being here with us, you still maintain that image of that world you visited. It intensifies as you take in more breaths. You see the details of whatever you saw. Now slowly open your eyes. Take one deep breath. And then clap your hands. That's just to wake anybody up that fell asleep. How many people were able, first of all, just to follow the images as I presented them to you? Most of you, okay. You have a visual imagination. Some people don't. And some people can close their eyes and never see anything. They have other senses that are predominant. They may hear things. They may sense things. And the people that do that can still have wonderful journeys in their mind by sensing their surroundings, smelling. I've had one person that smelled everything. How many people then were able to see a world, something else on the other side of that hill? Would anybody like to share? What kinds of things did you see? Yeah.
Mine wasn't, too terribly detailed. I just got a neat impression of mist and sunlight and shiny, shiny water.
Okay.
Really
Good.
pretty.
Good. Anybody else?
I felt a soft, spongy walking surface. You would just sort of, like, just thought it was like sort of stepping on suede or soft.
Mm-hmm.
Spongy.
Great. Anybody else? Something? Yeah.
I kind of went back to an event that happened yesterday. I went over to my next door neighbor and picked up their little kid. He's 2 years old. And I took him out in the yard, and there were some jets flying over. And he had never seen jets before. And somehow I went back to that. And this was my new world that I was looking at. But the significant thing about it was that I pointed out the jets to him as they were flying over. And he started laughing in complete joy at just seeing them.
Hmm.
And so everything that was taking place was within that frame, in that framework.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was in complete joy.
Really?
It was unique to see him do that.
That's good. That's something that happens more and more as people do visualizations or journeying of this sort, is that they're not necessarily a sense of joy within the vision itself, but an increased sense of joy in their lives. That one of the things that happens, especially as you get deeper into the practice of journeying and intensifying it, as I'm trying to do with a group in Rochester, which we use a lot of ritual involved, as well as drumming. You get deeper and deeper into that space of the unconscious, is basically what's happening. And the various people that have explored this in both visualization and through the practices that I'm talking about in terms of shamanism, find that they eventually reach a place which can only be described as spiritual or mystical. And that, the closer you get to that, the more joy people tend to have in their lives. And it's not I don't know. I was going to say it's not the kind of mystical experience as we talk about in religion, but it is, I guess. I showed you a slide to represent religion in the beginning of Saint Teresa. It was the ecstasy of Saint Teresa. And that could almost be described as a shamanic experience that she had, being pierced by the spirit. So religious ecstasy is, I guess, almost equivalent to what we're talking about in this. And that's where this whole thing gets controversial, because the various religions begin to, I don't know whether it's being protective or not accepting the fact or the possibility that the average person can attain this state so easily. It's hard, I guess, for again, that gets back to the changes and the difficulty we have in accepting changes. I talked about the drumming and some of the technological things. There's some unusual experiments going on in Virginia. A guy named Robert Monroe, who was a sound engineer, has been experimenting with sound and its effect, like the earphones, in altering consciousness. And he uses a technique he developed called hemisync, which is feeding two different sounds into each ear in a headphone, and the brain produces the frequency in between. And by adjusting those sounds, he can replicate the frequencies of the brain waves, and the brain then replicates the sound wave, and it sends people into these altered states of consciousness. But this is a very controlled one. Drumming, they believe, does the same thing. That the drumming that's used, that you were hearing, is very close to the brainwave activity when, at that period of time, just before you fall asleep. It's called theta waves. We start producing theta waves, and we start seeing hypnagogic imagery, is what the name is. And it's also why it's believed, it's beginning to be believed, that's why children sometimes have trouble falling asleep and are afraid, because they start seeing images in the dark room. It's a very natural state. We all do it. 60-70% of the population see imagery at some time, not all the time, but once in a while, just before they fall asleep. And it can be scary. It can be wonderful, because people solve problems they've had for months in that split second before they fall asleep through this imagery. What's happening is that all that subconscious stuff is all that stuff that's you've stored away in your mind starts floating around, and free associating and coming together. Well, Monroe, in playing with this, has been able to get people into very deep states of consciousness, and it's gotten very controversial because he's even understanding what's going on, because he mixes different frequencies. And he's had people that have said that they have talked to Christ. He's had people that have said that they have gone to a library, an ancient library, and consulted the Akashic Records, which is sort of the book of life. And so it gets very strange at times. There are explanations. Possible explanations for some of that. A researcher named Jean Houston, who's also done a lot of work with altered states of consciousness, she and her husband, Robert Masters, thinks that we have been exposed to so much in our lives that through books, magazines, television, and it gets more and more every day, and the theory that some neuroscientists believe that we don't forget anything in our lives. We're just not aware of it all very, very much, and we have trouble getting hold of it when we want it sometimes, but it's all there. And if that's the case, we have an incredible amount of raw material with which to manufacture new realities, manufacture things that we've heard about, things that may have just gone by when we were paying attention to something else. So the point where we don't even know we have a lot of this knowledge. So that people may be manufacturing these kinds of things. That may explain some of the New Age kinds of things like past lives through past life regression. It's doing the same thing, getting into the subconscious, letting the subconscious loose and free associate. So there's a lot of things going on that are I find very exciting, and I'm using them with my students. And I know it's getting late. I just want to go through a few last things here. Again, just a reminder of the ancient knowledge. An wise old man. That's another technique, is to, instead of just pushing you over a hill, I could have taken you to a wise old man who could have told you something about yourself, about some knowledge, or helped you solve some problem in your life. I don't want you to forget that knowledge, this stuff that we have from our evolution, that there are things there that have come with us, parts of us that we need to reconnect with. There's a lot of evidence saying that a lot of this is carried with us genetically. Twin studies are very exciting, showing us how much more has been transferred genetically than we ever thought was the case. So there's a lot more of that ancient being that we once were. And we should use that. Learn how to use it, not throw it away. And I just wanted to, this was a quick connection with art. These are my last two paintings, so I just thought I'd throw those in there. I'm very involved with this connection in my work, but I live in a modern world, and so I'm connecting both some of that ancient wisdom, trying to show that connection in my work. But the main thing that I wanted to show you is some of the things that are a result of my students' work in using visualization and some of these other techniques. My class, I'm not going to try to interpret them. You can make your own connections with them, but some of them were free visualizations like you did. Others were very directed in terms of seeing something. I've had them directed them to see a sculpture that they'd never seen before, and then they come back and draw it. Others, the more free ones, sometimes get pretty strange. And we do some exercises in order to deal with some of the scary stuff too, because sometimes it's scary. When you get into the subconscious, things can be pretty strange sometimes. It's like dreaming. Sometimes it doesn't all make sense. As I said, sometimes it gets scary, as well as having some bizarre students sometimes too. This is one that I was saying about a sculpture. I took them on a journey to an old European market with stalls, and they go through all these things, smelling the food, touching the fabrics, and then there's this stall that they can't see. It's got a canvas side, and they get up to it and they pull the canvas away, and there's a sculpture behind it, and they spend a few minutes exploring that, and I encourage them to touch it and figure out what the texture and so on is, and then when they come back, they draw pictures of it. This was another one similar to that. This one was a representation of the idea of leaving your body and traveling. The shamans, many of the shamans, I should go back to that one, believe in three different worlds. The underworld, this world, the middle world, and the upper world. And the underworld is more a world where you connect with animals and earth spirits and earth imagery. The upper world is one of connecting with spirits, spirit guides. And this was a journey of a student to the upper world. And I've had a number of journeys to the upper world where it looks like, and maybe it came from that, some of these space movies. And I think it was the same case for him. But I'd seen many images like that. This is an exercise that I do, which is probably one of the most successful projects I do with my students that uses visualization. They are to design a box where the outside represents their external self, how they present themselves to the world, how the world sees them. The inside of the box is that private world, the inner world. And when we do the inner part of the box, before they do that, we do a visualization exercise to take them inside to discover more about themselves. And this is the most powerful project that they come out with. I've had problems with it because it reveals so much that the students often, I've had trouble because they break down in class in revealing that to other students. And so I've had to go from tell us about your box to who would like to tell us about their box. And then they write a paper explaining what they know about what they've come up with. Some of it is they can't explain. We get into wonderful discussions about why they do things in different ways, and why one student has an open box and another student has a closed box, and some people decorate the outside of the box and some people refuse to. That's not them. They are a blank slate. Or people that put mirrors on the outside of their boxes because they see themselves as reflections of other people, and all sorts of other meanings and connotations. This one I just couldn't believe. Nobody in the class could. It was a pure white box. And you open it up. It's a little hard to see here, but it is the most grotesque. It was duct tape that had been burned with markers and all kinds of other bizarre colors, and it looked like somebody's insides. Well, to this guy, life is a bowl full of cherries, but a different kind of bowl. Another just white box. Trying to figure out what these people mean by these things, these little sticks going across. And you look at it, and sometimes when I have the class, everybody in the class try to figure out what's going on here. It's a wonderful exercise in interpreting meaning. And usually it gets pretty close. After a few minutes of looking at them, it gets pretty close to what the person was thinking about. Or if they didn't know, the discussion connects with them. And they say, yeah, wow, that feels right. There's often boxes with a lot of confusion inside. I get twisted yarn, wrinkled up pieces of cloth with things hidden in various places. Open boxes, structures. You know, I mean, look at that. Shy, quiet, controlled, and then a pencil stabbed through. Whiteout. Being an art school, I have a few woodworkers. This one happens to be a woman. This was one engineer last year. And unlike any project I've ever done, none of these ever look anything like any of the others. I mean, they get into this. I have hundreds and hundreds of these slides of these boxes because everyone is different and everyone is incredible. I mean that wonderful nature outside and a hand grenade inside. This is one of my favorite students, Leah. Everything is always falling out on Leah. Shirt's always untucked and everything is all. She comes into class and stuff falls on the floor. And true to herself, inside of her box was so confusing and wonderful. It just had layer after layer. I think that one's sideways actually. Let's see. This is the last one. This one is great. What do you think the inside of this person is like? You can't get in, first of all. It doesn't open up. There's this little hole here is a window. And it's red cellophane. And you look through it, and it's a photograph of Mom and Dad. I think that's it. Well, I hope that gives you a sense of some of the things that I've tried to do and how I've tried to connect some ancient knowledge with some of the things that are going on in the world today. Hopefully, it will have some impact on people in dealing with some of the problems, overcoming some of their fears, as well as moving us on to the next step in whatever our evolution is going to be. And as I've said, I believe that we are stepping into a new consciousness. So, with that, thank you. Anybody has any questions? I don't know if we have time for anything. Thoughts, ideas? Yeah.
Okay, when you were taking us on that journey, I remember seeing a television show, Alien Nation, and the alien came to Earth and took this accelerated, genetically programmed class on these different journeys. And as he would do so, he would go closer back to where he trying to self-destruct by jumping out of windows or just to believe that they were dead if they'd fallen over or something like that. And so I also remember when John Lennon was killed, 10th anniversary for his life, William Manson's, and another, Reagan, of course. All of the people with the guns and things all had this in common, including Lee Harvey Oswald. They were all under a self-hypnotic state before they went into this.
Mhm.
And I am a little leery about encouraging people to go into this type of self-hypnosis where they might catch into a destructive type of brainwave while they're in this act of what you call middle consciousness or
Mhm.
something like that, that this type of impulse nervous generation would come and take over a normal person, causing them to do abnormal things if they tracked into it too much, too often. I'd hate to see a world full of John Lennons and, that type of thing.
What-
Do you
Yeah,
understand
I know what
this?
you're. I know what you're. Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I think that the concern that there is no need for concern for the most part. Certainly, yes, it'd be wise to consider the audience, the people you're working with. I'm not a psychiatrist. I wouldn't know how to deal with someone that had a particular mental problem that might cause something like that. I would like to point out, though, that everyone, as far as we know, daydreams. Everyone we know does dream, whether you remember it or not, at least about 4 times a night. You have about 4 dreams a night. And neither of those, and as well as I said, 60-70% of the population have hypnagogic imagery as a natural occurrence. None of these things cause problems with people. The people that are going to have problems have problems already. In hypnosis, which is basically the same state, the accepted fact is, or not the accepted theory, whatever you want to call it, is that people will not do what they would not normally do anyways. If you are not willing to go along with this, it's not forcing you into anything.
Yeah, but you can be tricked. The mind can be tricked into thinking an onion is an apple and an apple is an onion, or that a person might have a weapon to kill you, and so you will kill them back in self-defense, or whatever.
Hypnotists and doctors have actually acknowledged that people are not ever fully out of consciousness, even in the deepest hypnotic state. I can understand your fears, but
And to refuse to do that is to send people out of here thinking that all is safe when it is not safe.
I'm sorry that we disagree. But I believe it is safe.
We wouldn't have John Lennon's.
There are sick people in the world. That's all that I think we can say.
I know, sister, and I hard-hearted, and I am trying to tell these people that you should not necromance. Necromance means consulting giving up the spiritual realm. It can also mean being of the spiritual realm to someone who's not there.
You're welcome.